of our God, the preserver and protector of all. You are without beginning and without end, none dual beyond comparison, and none can measure you. You are without color, without expression, without form, and without attributes. You are unlimited and unfathomable, beyond imagination and conception, eternal and imperishable. You are indivisible, and none can see you but with eyes divine. You always were, you always are, and you always will be. You are everywhere, you are in everything, and you are also beyond everywhere, and beyond everything. You are in the firmament and in the depths. You are manifest and unmanifest, on all planes and beyond all planes. You are in the three worlds and also beyond the three worlds. You are imperceptible and independent. You are the Creator, the Lord of Lords, the knower of all minds and hearts. You are omnipotent and omnipresent. You are knowledge infinite, power infinite, and bliss infinite. You are the ocean of knowledge, all-knowing, infinitely knowing. The knower of the past, the present, and the future. And you are knowledge itself. You are all merciful and eternally benevolent. You are the soul of souls, the one with infinite attributes. You are the Trinity of truth, knowledge, and bliss. You are the source of truth, the ocean of love. You are the ancient one, the highest of the high. You are Prabhu and Parameshvar. You are the beyond God and the beyond God also. You are Parabrahma, Paramatma, Allah, Elahi, Yazdan, Ahur Mazda, God Almighty and God the Beloved. You are named Izad, the only one worthy of worship. Avatar Meher Baba. You are Avatar Meher Baba. Parabrahma, Paramatma, Yazdan. La ilaha illallah. Oh God, Father in heaven, we repent, O God most merciful, for all our sins, for every thought that was false or unjust or unclean, for every word spoken that ought not to have been spoken, and for every deed done that ought not to have been done. We repent for every deed and word and thought inspired by selfishness, and for every deed and word and thought inspired by hatred. We repent most especially for every lustful thought, for every lustful action, for every lie, for all hypocrisy, for every promise given but not fulfilled, and for all slander and backbiting. Most especially also we repent for every action that has brought harm or ruin to others, for every word and deed that has given others pain, and for every wish that pain should befall others. In your unbounded mercy, we ask you to forgive us, oh God, for all these sins committed by us, and to forgive us for our constant failures to think and speak and act according to your will, and to forgive us for our constant failures to think and speak and act according to your according to your will. Till the very end, to your will, according to your will. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Meher Baba Ki Jai.
You gonna do Beloved God?
That was there.
Oh, did I? Oh,
You
where
missed
was
it.
I? Where was I? I'm sorry.
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I left that out. Oh my God, where was I? Oh my God. Oh, so I knew something was wrong there, and then that beloved God, help us all to love you more and more and more, and still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you. Beloved God, help us all to love you more and more and more, and still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you. And help us all to hold fast to Baba's Daman till the very end. And help us all to hold fast to Baba's Daman till the very end. Now, till the very end. Till the very end, to your will, according to your will. Jay Baba. Oh my God. I so much wanted to have this at the beginning, where it was in the original recording, but it got cut off. And there I just thank you for reminding me.
That's funny. Oh, okay, folks. What we're about to see then is a recorded talk that Tony gave. I can't remember when. What month was?
About 3 weeks ago, I think.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, last year. And now, Tony, you'll be here at the end, right? If there's discussion or questions or, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So, without further ado, this is MeherSepas, who had the bright idea to put Tony on, to hear his story, which it's great. I've heard it.
I was hearing it fine, but it's not synced. The sound and the visuals still are not synced. Um, so it's good if you listen, but if you look, it can make you crazy.
Mhm. Got to get to the right window. Mhm. Mm. Sorry, folks. Okay, try again. All right.
You know, Tony has been a dear friend of ours for many, many years. First, when I came to New York, I was so happy, just overwhelmed with the fact that there was a big Baba community there. The meetings used to be in Margaret Kraska's dance studio, where she taught her students about dance and also about Baba. And actually, I remember there was her seat that she would sit there and do all these things. So that was wonderful. But now, Tony, he was wonderful. We were just so lucky that, we met him right away. Sometimes he would give us a ride back home, and on these rides, during these rides, that he would tell us about the events of his day. It was interesting that we learned.
Elahi, he has done. Ahura Mazda, God Almighty, and God the Beloved. You are named Izad, the only one worthy of worship. Avatar, Meher, Baba. You are Avatar, Avatar, Meher, Baba. Marinaz just called me a few weeks ago and asked if I would do this, and I had no idea, and I said, I clearly got that Baba was saying, yes, do it, but I had no idea what it was going to be. And so it turns out it's going to be mostly about my time at the UN. But I'm going to begin, I guess, to give a little background. The first, in preparing, I noticed something. I've been working on a book on this, but I noticed that the first 30 years, I was born in September of 52, and the first 30 years of my life were sort of what you call a moon energy. It was emotions, it was relations with women, starting with your mother, it was safety, and all connected to Baba. And then starting in September of 82, for 30 years, I was at the UN, and it was very much of an outgoing sun energy. It was out in the world and now doing things. And it was interesting to me to see how Baba had clearly mapped that. When I was little, my teachers, we had a kind of special class, and so they gave us a lot of advantages. And they took us to the UN, and I remember listening to the headphones in the different languages, and my mother took me in what was it, July of 62. I got a letter from President Kennedy. All this was all tied up with the space program. I had sent him a letter for his birthday, and I got a personal thank you. So that was all part of me, that kind of energy. Decades later, when I moved into this house, we discovered this house across the way is a New York landmark. It was the house of Ralph Bunche, the African-American Undersecretary General who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his negotiations with the Palestinians and the Israelis, which at the time had some kind of success. And he used the money from the prize to buy this house. So I've had the UN around me. A little bit of my moon story, which will be the smallest part of this. I clearly had God in my life from the beginning, and particularly would say the rosary in a way that was a deep meditation on scenes in the life of Jesus. And I knew where I could go to connect with God's presence. And at one point in high school, I was teaching a friend guitar, and he was teaching me astrology. And I was a little skeptical, but interested. And he happened to draw up my brother's chart, and he read from this book, Raphael's Key and Guide to Astrology. He looked up this position, Saturn in the 4th house, and it said death or serious illness of the father at a very young age. And my brother was 3 when my father died after 2 years of cancer. I was 9. So I took it more seriously at that moment. And I said, let's look at my chart. I'll just cut to it. It came to a point where he said I was going to have more than one marriage. And as a Catholic kid, that was a sin. This was not something God wanted, you know. That's all I knew about that, really. And I also, and also not that she would die. It was because she, either you'd leave her or she'll leave you. And I knew if I loved someone enough to marry them, I wouldn't leave them. And if they left me, it would be really bad. So I got home that night and I went straight to that place where I knew, I say Baba, although I didn't know Baba by name then, where Baba was. And I said, God, you can't let this happen. And if I loved her, I was enough to marry her, the whole thing I just said. And I got a really clear inner answer that was, this is just something that you have to go through. You know, like there are things in life that people have to go through, and this is just something you have to go through. And I understood that, you know, and I kind of accepted it. And then I thought, but there's this other piece about marrying more than once, just like a mortal sin. You know, God does not. I said, so, but then I'm going to be, you know, disobeying your wish. So can't you just work it out? I'm willing to experience whatever I have to go through, whatever pain, whatever suffering. But can't you just work it out some other way so that I don't have to marry her, so I'm not like having two marriages? It turns out, no, I have had two. But and I got a clear sense of, okay, granted, now forget about it. And I forgot about it for 10 years, more than 10 years. On the day Baba, this was like maybe 1967, on the day Baba dropped his body, at the moment Baba dropped his body, I had an experience involving a woman who, and I was being separated from her, and a voice came from outside and said this word that just saved everything. And I'm not telling a story because that's a whole other story. But it put me on a quest for the woman and the meaning of that word. And a year later, when I saw Baba's picture and heard who he was, I immediately recognized him. That was like March of 1970. And in the summer, I happened to hear Harry Kenmore, who was one of Baba's intimate Mandali. Baba called him, that you're as close to me as Erich and Francis. You are one of the Mandali, and you are my apostle. Which, as a Catholic, that also had like a lot of weight, former Catholic. And he said the Parvardagar prayer. And I was sitting there in one of Margaret Krask's dance studios, I think it was. But, and there was a big mirror on the wall. It was the Monday night meetings. And he started saying the prayer with such passion and intensity. If you've ever heard it, it begins like, oh, Parvardagar, the preserver and protector of all. And that's a insufficient shadow of the energy, because Baba said when he said the prayer, it went straight to the seventh plane. But for me, kind of a hippie-ish kind of kid at 17, I guess I was, I was going to start laughing. And so I bit the inside of my cheeks so I wouldn't laugh. And there was a picture of Baba, what I call the compassion picture. He was with some children in the actual full picture, but it's just his face. And I'm just looking at Baba's face and I'm biting my cheek, and he gets through the prayer. But halfway through, internally, I just started to levitate. It was like I was being lifted into Baba's presence in this really unique way. And when the meeting ended, we were out on the street, I suddenly blurted out what I used to say when our family doctor used to come because I was sick and he was going to give me a needle. And I blurted out on 57th Street near Carnegie Hall, I said, I don't want to get a needle. But it turned out I had about a year around Harry Kenmore. A few months later, I heard of the society. I attended his talks every Saturday. I started going to his discourse talks. And Baba had said, I learned much later, that before he dies, towards the end, he would be surrounded by a group of young people and that they would be fortunate and blessed. And he said, my nazar will be on, the talks he was giving was at Baba's order. So that had the energy of Baba's command. And he said, my nazar will be on the group. And it was so powerfully there on his talks. but he died. He died in May of yeah, May of 1971. So from like September through May, I was around him. It's an inspiring story. He could have healed himself, and he didn't, because Baba had told him he had developed powers before he came to Baba, and Baba had said, "Don't use those anymore." But the group was taken over by someone else who had been his assistant. Baba had actually, I learned later, had asked him to drop that person, but it didn't happen that way. But he actually said, "Baba, but she helps me so much." And Baba said, "Okay," which Baba says, "Don't do that," But she took over the group, and over the course of, and I stayed, as a lot of people began leaving because of things that were going on. I stayed until this vision experience that Baba gave me when he dropped his body began to play out. And at the end, I was so staggered by what had happened that I just needed to take time for myself. So I wasn't attending the group's meetings as much in Pennsylvania, and then I was being attacked. It was either we're going to draw you in, this person, or we'll destroy you. And one person left Baba under that kind of treatment. Anyway, I finally left, but reconnected with the Baba world, and I wound up getting to India thanks to the generosity of a friend 2 years later for Amartithi in '82. I'd been with the group 6-7 times, and I needed to go, and that's another story, how Baba did that. But I knew the group was going to be there, and it would be uncomfortable, but I was not going to miss the chance to get to Baba's Samadhi and to be with the Mandali. And sure enough, they were there for those 2 weeks around Amartithi, and they shunned me, and Mandali would make little comments indicating they knew what was going on. "Don't you know Tony?" "Oh yes, hi Tony." But they finally left, and I was feeling really sad. I had just started a job when I got this opportunity to come to Amartithi, and I wanted 3 weeks, and I told him I know people there I'm very close to. They're old. They might pass away. I might not get to see them again. It was true about the Mandali, but I wanted 3 weeks. Well, they had the big boss come in from Chicago, and they whittled me down to 2 weeks. So now I'm in India. 2 weeks have passed. That tension of that group being there was gone, and I was free to be just me with Baba, and I was feeling down about it. So Lynn Owens, her name was at the time, saw me, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I told her. And looking to me like a female Stan Laurel, a very funny comedian from the 30s and 40s, she just gestured like this. She didn't say a word. She just gestured up the hill to Baba's Samadhi, and basically was saying, "Talk to Baba." So, all right. I had never really thought I could do that. I surrendered to Baba in the Samadhi. I tried to be in his presence. The idea that I could just talk to him there. So I went up. There was no one else around, so I had the space to myself. I spoke internally, but I told Baba, "I've been here, and it's been wonderful, but it's been stress. I don't want to leave now. I want to be here in your presence." And I got a clear, overwhelming sense that Baba was saying, "Okay, you can stay." And I was like, whoa! I had already told the Mandali I was leaving the next day. I knew, I cabled my job at work. I was able to extend the ticket for 2 weeks. So they whittled me from 3 to 2, and now I was stretching it past 4. I extended the ticket, and I cabled my job, said must expend stay, will explain on return on 3rd March. And the next day I'm in Mandali Hall. I know Baba wants you to be responsible. And I was a little nervous that I was going to get chewed out by the Mandali, by Erich maybe, for extending that. What about your job, So I walked into Mandali Hall, and Erich said, "Oh, you're here." I said, "Yeah." I said, what's going on?" I said, "I extended my stay for another 2 weeks." He said, "What about your job?" And I went, "Oh my God, here it comes." He said, did you send them a cable? And I said, yes, I sent them a cable. He said, so good, as long as you sent them a cable. Baba had cleared the way. I got back. That job went crazy. Although Baba had interesting stories meeting all these Baba people who had met Baba in the hallway of my job. That's another story. But I had a young coworker. It was a 4-person office. I was often left alone with her. She was crazy. She would chase me over desks and say, "You men's are all alike." And I couldn't work there anymore. They weren't dealing with it. I looked for work for, oh, I'm sorry. I left out one important thing. After the 4 weeks, the reason I'm telling this, in a UN thing, as I was finishing my month in India, I had time again alone with Baba in the Samadhi. And I wasn't asking for anything. I swear I wasn't. I was saying, Baba, this has been so wonderful. It's like his rain was pouring down and soaking into the earth of me and just totally enlivening everything. And I said, this has been so wonderful. And I said, Baba, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if I could come here, take off from work and come here for a month? And I thought, because it was so hard to get those 2 weeks there. And I thought, and I haven't been to the center for so long. Wouldn't it be nice if I had a job where I could take off a week and go to the center? And in that same mood, I'm going, and you know, I knew the people I was working for and what it was about. It was a Broadcast Credit Association. I said, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if I had a job where I felt it meant someone and something, and it wasn't just feeding someone's greed, you know? And and you know, I've got so much debt. This friend loaned me the money, and then he forgave the loan later in the year. But, you know, I had a lot of debt. I mean, it seemed a lot to me then. In the retrospect, it wasn't that much, but it was for me then. I said, Bob, wouldn't it be a wonderful thing if I had a job where I could pay off all these debts and not have that kind of thing going on? And so it was that. I just had this chat with Baba, and I left and went back to New York. Things got a little bit crazy with that job. By the summertime, I quit, and I felt, well, I got to be responsible. I treated the job hunt as a job, and every day for a month I went out looking for work, like 9 to 5. And I happened to see an ad for a 3-month assignment at the UN, and I didn't want a 3-month assignment, but I thought, well, just something to tide me over while I'm looking for a real job, you know, maybe be okay. So I went to take the exam. It was in the word processing unit. You had to take a written exam, a typing exam. Also, I did great on the written exam. My typing was like 130 words a minute, but I was over. They have a maximum amount of mistakes that you can make, and I was over the maximum. The guy said, "You've done great on all of these exams. Your typing is amazing, but you're over that limit. Why don't you just come back again and just type a little bit more slowly, a little more carefully?" So they kind of were like encouraged me. But I thought, no. This is a temp job. And well, just at that time, the first Northeast gathering took place. And when I left this, it was the Society for Avatar Meher Baba in New York. And when I left, the manner in which I left and the bluntness, the loving bluntness I had in some conversations with some of the people who were still really tied into the group and even in sort of leadership positions, wound up encouraging that family to leave. And when they left, a lot of people followed them out. And in fact, Mani, when I went to India the following summer, as I was leaving, and she was saying goodbye, she gave me a hug, and then she said, "Thank you for making it all happen." And I went, huh? What have I made happen? I'm here with you in this wonderful month. It was a drought. I had a lot of access. And she looked at me again, held my eyes, and said, "Thank you for making it all happen." And then I thought, okay, when I write up my story, that's how I'll dedicate it to Baba. Thank you for making it all happen. But it finally became clear to me that she was thanking me for what broke the hold that had been keeping those people in a very unhealthy Baba situation. By the way, I sincerely address things like, is this person Baba? Why are you acting as if this person is Baba? Well, all right. So now it's this Northeast gathering, and all those people who had left after me were there. There was this big group of ex-society members. Someone called up from Minnesota. Wait a second. I got to cut it. There's so many stories and stories. Chris Rieger was there. And I happened to mention to him about this thing with the UN. And I said, but I'm not going back. I mean, I need a regular time. Well, he somehow felt intensely that I was supposed to go back and take that exam. He felt Baba saying that. He didn't put it in those words, but it was clear that was what was going on. And I didn't feel that, but I thought, look, you could be trying to tell me something and I'm not hearing it. If Chris is hearing this so clearly, I should at least go back and take the exam. I didn't say that right. I didn't think that right away. But the gathering ended the last day. Kitty Davy was the main speaker. And the night before there had been a music program, but the Baba Stars took up about 2.5 hours, and then everyone else, starting at around 10 or 11 o'clock, was on the open mic part. So I got on at 2 a.m. And I didn't mind. I mean, it was fine with me. I was happy that I could play and sing. But now it's Sunday afternoon. We're on this little hill. Kitty's in this chair. She gives this talk. And everyone's gathered around her. It's a big like circle, almost like a hive. And they all know her so well because they've all been going to the center and had personal access. And I'm outside kind of looking in, and I'm feeling sorry for myself, really, that because of my years in society, if I saw them, it was with the group. I had no personal connection with Kitty, really. And I was feeling kind of bad about it. And all of a sudden, and everybody's, oh, Kitty this, and oh, Kitty the hi, Kitty, and Kitty got it. All of a sudden, between where I was standing and Kitty in the middle, like parting the Red Sea, the hive opened, and there was a direct, clear space between me and Kitty, and everyone started talking to themselves. No one else was talking to Kitty. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry I couldn't stay to hear you sing last night." And I said, "Kitty, thank you for even remembering that I play." She said, "Oh, I know all about you." And I'm going, "Really?" She said, "I know things are difficult for you now." And the look on my face must have said, "This gathering is so beautiful. What could be difficult?" And she added, "Financially." And I went, "Oh, yeah, okay. But everything is going to be fine." She said, "I know you had to move out of your house, out of your home, and your brother doesn't get along with your stepfather." And I'm like, "How does she know all this?" And then I blurted it out. I said, "Kitty, how do you know all this?" She said, "Oh, your brother told me." My brother's not a Baba lover. My brother was not there. I had not told anyone about this. I thought maybe I said something to Chris Rieger, but no, I hadn't. "Oh, your brother told me." And at that instant, the Red Sea closed again, and everyone's talking to Kitty, and I'm just standing there like, Baba. It was, and then later I thought about it that Baba would travel incognito, and he would tell them to say he was their elder brother. So that was the way I had to take that. And when I actually asked Kitty about it years later, she said, "Oh, it must have been Baba." She said, "When I don't remember, I know it was Baba." So, and then I'm standing by this fence as the car comes up to drive her out, to drive her back to Myrtle Beach. And it goes slowly, and she's by the passenger window, which is rolled down, and she's waving. But I look at the car pass, and vividly, clearly, where Kitty was, I saw Baba waving. So all of this I took as some encouragement, among everything else, to go back and take the UN exam. And I passed everything just fine. I was one of the last 3 of about 30 people. They still needed 3 more people. I was one of the last 3. The General Assembly was starting like the next day. And at the end, so we're into the UN part now. This is all definitely UN stories. So, well, at the end, there was a lot of competition. They were going to keep like 3 people to give them a fixed term contract, which was a big deal. And everybody's saying, oh, you're going to get one. You're going to get one. And I knew if I start thinking like that and I get into this competitive thing, I'm going to blow whatever else is going on. I was uncomfortable. And just at that point, I happened to be working the night shift one week. We had rotating. And at midnight, you could take a taxi home, you get the receipt, turn it in, and you get reimbursed. And so I called, I went down, they gave me the cab number. Nobody showed up. That had never happened before. One cab, another. People who left, who weren't even ready to leave when I left the office, were getting their cabs and leaving, and there was no one for me. Suddenly a cab pulls up, kind of close to where I am, maybe one car's width across. And there's something about this driver. And he rolls down his window on the other side, and he says to the other cab driver next to him, he says, so you finally got one. And he said, yeah, I haven't been getting any fares. Oh, well, good, you finally got one. That's great. And then I saw him, I walked up, I said, look, you're not the number that they gave me. But he said, come in. I said, you're not the number, just come in. Okay. I was going to just, so I got in. He drove up to 59th Street Bridge. He went over, he got onto 21st Street, which you drive down to the Grand Central. It's about a mile. And we get to the first traffic light, and we're stopped. And I said to him, you know, this 21st Street is such that once you get your first green light, if you just keep a steady pace, you won't get any more green lights all the way down about a mile or so to the Grand Central. He said, okay. So the light turned green. He started driving. 2 blocks later, we're at another red light. I said, remember I said, if you just keep at a steady pace, you won't get another red light. And here we are again, another red light. And he looked at me. He had a round face, smooth skin. He was Indian. He looked around at me like through the grate. There was an opening. He said, you know why we're at a red light? And I said, like it was a riddle or something. I said, why? He said, that's because I drive so fast. And I said, okay, Baba, all bets are off. I'm just going to enjoy the ride home. And we get home. He eventually actually pulls in across the street from my apartment, and we start talking. But on the way home, he's telling me, first I'm watching him. And he's driving down this area, which has like kind of factory buildings for a while. And he's surveying it like this is his kingdom. It's like he's looking at, like, this is all my place here. And I'm getting to visit the place here, you know. And when we start talking, I said, you're from India. He said, and my family is very wealthy. We're from the Kohinoor Diamonds or something, I think he said. And when we, he said, I just drive around. I pick up anyone. I take them anywhere they want to go. That's not your typical New York cab driver. So we're parked across from my apartment. And he says, you know, my family is very wealthy. They don't know I'm doing this. They're so not wealthy. They're so beautiful. My family is so beautiful, my family in India. If they knew I was doing this, they would make me come home right away. So I just don't tell them. It was like a mischievous thing. And he said, I pick up anyone, take them where they want to go. I said, I just drive around listening to my tape. It made no sense to me, but I didn't stop to question it. I went inside. I was going to take a little self-hypnotic tape that night for something. And you're supposed to come out of this little trance, take a sip of water, and then write whatever comes to mind. And I wound up writing, and suddenly, that taxi driver. Oh, and I had the thought in the cab, is this Baba? And I thought, Tony, come on. Baba says the signs of being in the Master's presence include the feeling of bliss you have in his presence, the coming to a lower level. There are 3 things Baba mentions. And in the back of the cab, I'm saying, do I feel any bliss? No, I don't feel any bliss. Tony, don't be crazy. How could this be Baba? But now I'm writing that down, and I get to the line, I just drive around listening to my tape. Now, all the while I was in the cab, I was hearing all the radio calls come in. You know, they come in from his radio. at some point, I glanced down when he said that. It didn't totally register. There was a little cassette player and a white cassette tape inside, and it was labeled radio calls. And where the radio should have been on the dashboard, there were just two wires sticking out into the empty air. So he was not getting radio calls. He just had radio calls playing, and somehow they let him in to pick me up and drive me home. And at that point, the bliss that I wasn't feeling was shooting through me. I'm in my apartment going, oh my God, this is Bob. And every time I wrote something else, the bliss was shooting. So the big effect of that was that I didn't give a damn about what competition was going on about who was going to be kept on at the UN. I was just full of Baba's presence everywhere I went after that. And for sure, I was one of the last 3 kept on. And with a fixed term contract for 1 year, instantly, I had 6 weeks paid vacation, which meant I could go to India for 4 weeks if I wanted. I could go to Myrtle Beach for 2 weeks. I was working for a place I felt meant something. It wasn't just feeding someone's greed. And because there was a General Assembly and we also covered the Security Council, this was just word processing. Later, I was actually in the meetings, but at this point, it was just that. I made so much overtime. I was in the general service. Professionally, you don't get overtime, no matter how much you work. But I would work weekends on the Security Council all weekend, through the night sometimes. And in fact, that was how I got to go back to India the next time. Oh, I didn't mention it. That group, it was very clear the way it became after Kenmore died. And the suffering that I went through in being there, I looked like, my pictures when I left the group looked like I'd been in a concentration camp. That was the suffering that I agreed to, where I said, can't you just work this out some other way? Rather than having to marry that person. And I did meet the woman who was in the experience Baba gave me, and she was the one who clearly I would have married had I not imposed on God to change the timeline so I wouldn't be disobeying him, you know? All right, so let's see. I'm working at the UN. I want to read a story. I'd been at the UN for a while at this point. I didn't think I'd be free enough to tell the stories, but now, once again, I can't stop. So I think, but it'll be fun to read. It's something that actually happened, and I posted this to the listserv, and this is what I posted back then on January 6th, 1996. I said, I got my first internet computer around Christmas of 1995. One of the first things I did was sign up for the Avatar Meher Baba listserv. I might have remained a lurker for years, but life intervened with a series of events which just had to be shared. And so, under the impulse of clear inner prompting, divine prompting, I wrote up the story and posted it. It was posted a week or so later after I had worked up the courage. I thought that was the end of the story, but I was mistaken, and this is what I posted. Ralph works at the UN, where he helps see to it that the official recordings are made of all the open meetings held there. He's been doing this as long as I've known him, and we met back in 1982 when I started working at the UN. From the start, Ralph and I had an instant rapport. Though not a, quotes, Baba lover, he clearly liked Baba. Over the years, he would ask me about my trips to India, often with a wistful look in his eyes. He was always eager to hear my latest Baba stories, and I have quite a few, and I have more now. And when my personal life threw me into an unexpected personal odyssey a year or so ago, I discovered in Ralph, as in many others, a real friend. In expressing his appreciation of Baba, Ralph once told me, Meher Baba was my first master. I never know what to make of comments like that, so I simply let it be. But it came up again about a week or so before Christmas this year, when we ran into each other in the UN cafeteria and sat down for a cup of coffee and some conversation. Ralph and I talked about the holidays, the UN, even William Butler Yeats' love life. For the first time in years, he repeated that Meher Baba was my first master, and went on to explain. It seemed that back in the late 60s in Berkeley, he and some friends would get together once a week for several hours to study the discourses. This went on for several months until they drifted apart. I knew it, I said. I had always felt a solid Baba connection with Ralph, and now I knew why. His contact with Baba was not as casual as he had made it sound. When he asked me what I meant, I said that when one establishes such a link with the avatar, it always remains as a vital presence within oneself, even if one chooses not to look at it for a while. His story merely confirmed what I had always felt. Ralph backed off a bit. To be fair to me, he said, he could not say he believed Baba was the avatar. I realized my spontaneous enthusiasm had been a bit threatening, so I backed off a little. After all, what did it matter? Ralph clearly had a solid connection with Baba, and whether he believed Baba to be the avatar was a moot point, I felt, and I went on to say so. Prefacing what I was about to tell him, I said, I never used this phrase. I don't even like it. It's like something someone on the McLaughlin group, a political discussion group on TV, would say. But really, the question of whether Baba is the avatar is just a red herring. Interesting, I thought. So I get back to my desk, and my stepfather had died after another heart attack, massive heart attack, and they had apparently given him the wrong blood. And my brother, who was an unusual character, was convinced that he was going to sue them. Even if he died, he was 78, 80 something. You're not going to get any money. You get lost wages. He didn't have any wages. But one of the fellow press officers, now I was in the professional category, by the way. After 7 years, I took the general service to professional exam. Her boyfriend was a doctor. And she told him the situation, and he called me. He looked over the papers. I gave him the papers. And he said, really, the question of this whole thing is just a red herring. So that's what I cut out of what I'm reading. But I said, interesting, I thought. 2 red herrings in the span of 15 minutes. An interesting coincidence, no doubt, but surely nothing more. That evening, I went to hear Marianne Williamson speak at Town Hall. Marianne lectures on A Course in Miracles. The presence in Town Hall for her talks is like a big Baba meeting, and there were often a few Baba lovers in the crowd. After her talk, she takes questions, and when the program is over, she usually hangs around to speak personally with those who still need to talk. I like to stay and listen. During the formal question and answer period, a question had come from her own sign language interpreter. The woman was Christian, her husband Jewish, and they recently had a baby boy. Religion was not a problem for them until she asked if her child could play the baby Jesus in a Christmas play. As a Christian, it meant a lot to her. As a Jew, her husband drew the line. Marianne, both a Jew and a lover of Christ, gave a powerful, insightful, and loving answer. Marianne's answer satisfied the person concerned, but the issue pressed some buttons among those in the audience. It was one of these who came up later to make her case, as I stood a few feet away and listened. Marianne's point was clear. The real issue was the wall between the woman and her husband. The spiritual challenge was to let it be dissolved through love by truly surrendering the problem to God. As for the Christmas pageant itself, she said, quote, really, the whole thing about the baby Jesus is just a red herring. All right, Baba. Now it was unmistakable. This was no mere coincidence. Here was your hand, plain and easy to see. Still, I gave no greater significance to the red herring itself, other than as a vehicle for you to say, here I am, and what could be more meaningful? It was a wonderful evening, and when I got home, it was nearly 8:30 p.m. My brother called, and I told him to find out what that doctor had said. And I told him about this red herring business, and I said, what the hell is a red herring anyway? And he looked it up. He said, the herring was used to throw dogs off the scent when they were on a hunt. It would be painted red and placed at a crossroads. Between its bright color and striking smell, the dogs would be completely distracted and either lose the trail entirely or run off in the wrong direction. But still, I stubbornly refused to see any personal meaning in all of this. It was now 12:30 a.m. I should have gone straight to bed, but instead I turned up the sound on an HBO movie called The Juror's Story, or The Juror, I think. is about a juror on a case involving a big mafia big shot who threatens to kill her and her child if he's convicted. Although everyone expects a quick, easy conviction, she drags out the deliberations, resulting in a hung jury. So here I am in the living room. I hang up the phone, turn up the TV, and find myself in the jury room as this woman makes a far-fetched case for the defendant's constitutional rights. At this, the jury foreman crosses over to her and says, "Look, this whole thing about his constitutional rights is just a red herring." Okay, Bob. Your patience and persistence, I get it. And finally, I just asked you, what is this all about, Baba? What are you trying to tell me? And all right, it's amazing how quickly you answer, Baba, when we ask the right questions. Suddenly, I remembered my conversation with Ralph. I had said the question of your avatarhood was just a red herring. Quote, "Well, if my avatarhood is a red herring, then everything is a red herring." How could I have failed to hear this when you make yourself so clear? And a few days, someone else pointed out that actually, other than Baba's avatarhood, everything else is a red herring. It leads you someplace else. So Baba picked up on that. Oh, and it wasn't over. I hope this is as interesting as I think it is. After I posted this, a fellow on the listserv by the name of Gary in California was the gay guy who had first decided to flip Baba's rainbow flag to use it in the gay pride parade. It was apparently the first time that had ever been done. And he is a sales guy and a gay Baba lover. And he said, after I read your story, I happened to look over the prospects in a database I use in the office. And the name that came up was someone I last contacted on Friday, the 5th of January, basically when I posted the story. The name of the prospect is R. Herring. I mean, I don't make much of it, but the obvious first impression when you see that is red herring. And he said, "How many red herrings can you fit on the head of a pin?" Well, after I made some funny reply or corny reply to Gary's note, I decided to start searching on the web. What do you call it? Playing around on the web. And at some point I entered the name of an old girlfriend. And the Google thing came back, and the last thing said the information source. Looked interesting. I clicked on it. It was the red herring homepage. And it says right underneath that, "Not what you were looking for?" And it's like one of those 404 things. Followed by red herring. 1, something used to divert attention from a basic issue. 2, a false diversionary clue. Origin, herring drawn across the trace in hunting to divert the hounds. Okay, I admit this silly page was a bad idea, and I've removed it, but, well, anyway, so that was is there more? There's a little bit more here. So the other thing was, Baba had clearly been encouraging me to write. And my first year in the press section as a professional, it was 1989, I had a dream that I was calling up India. And in those days, it was really hard to get through to India. And I'm in the press section on the phone, trying to get through. And it's so much static, and I'm pressing my ear into the phone, and this could only happen in a dream. I got sucked in through the line, and next thing you know, I'm at the trust office. And there were all these teachers, including someone like who worked with me upstairs when I was in the press word processing, and they're punching time cards to go out and do their day's work. The next thing, I'm in the office, and Baba is there dictating to Erich. And he's dictating 10 points for something that he wants me to write. And so Erich takes the first point, tells me, and I write it down. And Erich says the second point, and I start writing. But I'm going to wait, because I need to really get it. If this is what Baba wants me to write, I need to understand each point. And by the time I get to the third point, and I said, wait now. Erich, I never saw Erich frustrated or annoyed, but he was getting frustrated and annoyed. And Baba, responding to that, explains that I had to, integrate what Baba was saying so I would be able to write what he was asking me to write. And then he pointed to me and he said to Erich, he's going to be a great writer. That red herring story was the first story that I had tons of stories, but the first time I put one in writing. And the next leap in that direction, I feel Baba wants me to write all these stories up, and I'd gotten stuck. And Meher Naz called, and in preparing my UN stories, I had to start at least writing up a rough version so I would remember them. When I was working in the press section, most of my associates were temporary. Oh, and then after my first 1-year contract, it was converted into probationary into permanent, which they don't give out anymore. So my job was set at the UN. My colleagues were from the press, and they were on temporary contracts. They couldn't, if they worked 12 months, they had to get benefits, so they'd make them take off a month and then rehire them. And so we went to cover the General Assembly session. I was assigned to cover the main committee, the first committee, the Political and Disarmament Committee. And I was the junior, even though I was senior at the UN. And we would sit in on the meeting. We'd listen to the translation. I would type up, and I'm a fast typist, I would summarize on the spot what the person was saying. We would then send it to the editor's desk. They would edit it and eventually assemble them all and put out the press release around an hour after the meeting was over. And in those days, it was the height of the Cold War. I mean, one of the height, yeah, it was still going full steam. And so the US would have one position, the Soviet Union would have the other position. And just about every other country that got up to speak would either repeat the kind of things the US was saying or repeat the kind of things the Soviet Union was saying. And it was tedious, and it was useless in a way. And the US and Soviet Union would both say challenging things to each other, you know. And that's what my colleague would put in the lead, because once you've done everything, then you have to write the lead, the kind of the broad summary of the meeting. And he would always put, you know, if it bleeds, it leads, they say it in journalism. So there's a conflict, there's a controversy. But the controversy wasn't news. I didn't think it was news. That's been going on a while now. But in the middle of each statement, the US would say something like, look, if the Soviet Union were willing to do this, then we would be willing to do such and such. But they're not willing to do that. And the Soviet Union would say something quite similar. If the US was willing to do well, then we would really be willing to do blah, blah, blah. And it was, but mainly they had to prove to their home governments that they were being rough and tough with the other side. As far as I was concerned, that was the news. So I started putting those things in the lead. The representative of the US said if Russia was willing to do such and such, the US was willing to accommodate. And Russia said if the US was willing, the US said it would accommodate. It changed the tone of things. I was putting in the lead what they actually said, what their hearts actually felt, and I covered all the other stuff. But in the lead, I was making it, from their point of view, I was making it look like they were the good guys, that they were both the good guys. And saying more than making prominent what they would never have been allowed to make prominent. And I could feel a certain appreciation. No, but nothing was said, but I could feel that. And after 3 months, things started to thaw. And suddenly the US was talking, and glasnost and perestroika was in the air. And there was a beginning of an opening up to with the Soviet Union and the US. Can I say I did that? No. Can I say Baba did that through what I wrote? Yeah, I think so. Another example was when I first started, when I was in the press section. Early on, I was asked if I wanted to go to cover a conference in Cuba. This is just word processing. I wasn't actually as a reporter. But so it was great. I landed there on Easter Sunday in 1985, and it's a beautiful place. I felt the people were charming and lovely, but they seemed a bit repressed, which was understandable. It was clear that they were keeping, this was an important conference for Cuba. And sometimes I would turn around in the hallway of the hotel and Castro was just walking down the hallway to meet with someone he wanted to talk to. As an American, I could never have gone to Cuba. I got to, they took us out one day to, on an outing. It was going to be to, as far as we knew, the Isle of Youth, it's called. But it's supposedly an island that has black sand. And me and some friends had our bathing suits on under our clothes. But they took us instead to the American-made prison where Castro was kept under Batista and things like that, you know. And they took us out to a lunch. And some fellow there is an older man, a Cuban. I didn't know him. I didn't know anything about him. We were right by under a banyan tree. And he looks at me and he says, you know, you remind me of a priest I had when I was in school. And then he was about to say, but of course I don't believe in that stuff anymore. And I looked at him, I said, well, thank you, my son, for remembering me after all these years. And it was a teasing thing to do, but everybody laughed. Turns out he was, I found out much later, when I got home, he was the number 3 man in Castro's government. His name was Goher, all I remember. On the way back, we're in a hydroplane that took us to the Isle of Youth. On the way back, then we get into the bus, and the UN official gets up and says, I would like to let you know that His Excellency Fidel Castro Ruiz has invited you all to join him for dinner at the presidential palace tonight. So they took us back to the hotel, and we had just a little bit of time to get freshened up and changed. And but we get to the palace, and everyone's on a line to meet Castro, and I was too. And I shook his hand, he shook my hand, and then we all went into the main eating room, which is kind of buffet kind of thing. And Castro was, well, for my first thought was, now I'm going to be screwed now if I ever want to run for president. Not that that was ever in my mind, because now there's evidence of me shaking hands with the bad guy, you know. But we went back into the dining hall, and he took out a cigar. Well, at the minute he took out a cigar, the foreign ministry gave cigars to everyone. And he was mingling. He was a few feet away, taking questions. I had some questions, but I had the feeling that any of the questions I asked were going to have enough of an edge that I could have gotten in trouble. So I didn't ask them. And the next morning we were supposed to fly back to New York. And I get to the airport. We're on Cubana Airlines. That you always go with the airline of the country that you're traveling to. And they tell me, your ticket was not reconfirmed. Well, I mean, and I knew they were paying close attention. I said, it's got to be. They know me, and nope. But I'm putting on another seat. Give me another seat. There were not enough seats. I couldn't get out of the country. Me and 5 other people from NGOs, for whatever reason, they brought us back to the hotel, put me back in my hotel room. No matter what we did, we couldn't get out. Now, it turned out this fellow Guerra was the guy in charge, and it's their airline. All he had to do was pick up the phone and say, make sure he gets a seat. So it was not an accident. But that night, I would say Baba's prayers before I went to bed, out loud. And that night, I called Arsenio Rodriguez, because I was Baba friend, because I was going to stay with him for 2 days in Mexico, because you couldn't fly directly from the U.S. to Cuba in those days. So I was going to stay a day or 2 with Arsenio. And I told him what happened. And he worked for the UN Environment Program, and it turned out they put me in the same room that he would always be in when he went to Havana. That was ominous in a way. But I said, this is a problem. He said, don't worry, you'll get out. It may take a few days. I said, yeah, but I have a court case with my landlord. If I don't show up, he's going to win. And he said, look, everything will be fine. Baba's got you. I said, but call me tomorrow. If you don't get out tomorrow, call me. And if you don't get out, I'll call your wife in New York so she can contact the authorities. And the instant that he said contact the authorities, the phone call was cut off. So if I had any doubt, because they the scuttlebutt was that our rooms were bugged. If I had any doubt, the room and the phone was bugged. Now it was clear that it was true. To me, anyway. So I get ready for bed, and as usual, I'm saying Baba's prayers. I did have the thought before that. I don't know we say it aloud, but I'm saying it aloud. If someone's bugging the room, they get to hear Baba's prayer. What could go wrong with that, right? So, but this time now, not only did I say the prayers aloud, but I then started talking to Baba out loud about what a shame it is, the relations between Cuba and the U.S. And it's all because of pride on both sides. They have so much to offer each other, and a better relationship would be so good for everyone. And and da 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 da. The next day, I got back to the airport. Again, they told me no room at the inn, but they let me call up Guerra, the number 3 guy, who remembered me thanks to that joke, And I said, "Do you remember?" He says, "Yeah, I remember you." I said, "Oh, I'm stuck here again at the airport," and he says, "Well, I would love to help you, and of course, we have all solidarity with you." These were killer words because it meant nothing, except I was wearing the picture of Baba that many people at the time thought was Lech Walesa, and it occurred to me this week, maybe he thought I was flaunting Lech Walesa's anti-communist thing while I was there by wearing his picture, and that was Solidarity, the union that Lech Walesa worked for. In any event, he said, we have all solidarity, but really it's up for UNDP. The UNDP development program had an office there. And I had to bite my tongue not to say, "This is your damn airline. What are you talking about? Nobody gets on or off without you." But he said, "So, I'm sorry." But at the last moment, he changed his mind, and I heard that he called up, and he said, "Put him on." So I get on the plane. I get on the plane. I'm sitting next to a woman who works for the Organización para la Independencia de Puerto Rico, the Organization for Puerto Rican Independence. And I say, "But the Puerto Ricans want that?" She says, "No, but we have to educate them." I'm on the plane. They come around selling Havana Club rum. It's delicious, and it's $10 a bottle. It's the best rum you've ever tasted. I took out a traveler's check. They said, "No, we won't take a traveler's check." So this woman loaned me $10. I think it was $5 a bottle. I think I got 2 bottles. And gave me her card so I could pay her back. I get back to New York. The next day, there's an official post office envelope in my mailbox. I open it up. I had sent her a check inside a card of Baba Samadhi. And thanks for the rum, it was delicious. And my check for $10. I open up the official envelope. There's my original envelope, snipped in the corner, slit, with the check inside, untouched. And it was clear they were watching that organization as a dangerous organization. So that woman never got her check back, her money. But a strange thing happened. Suddenly, Castro started doing nice things and saying nice things and making nice gestures towards the U.S. And I'm watching this. It was one after another. It wasn't making big news, but it was really obvious that he had, and many people had suggested that they thought I was an American agent. If so, and I had that conversation with Baba, that was an appeal to open up better relations, which is actually the kind of the way that JFK brought an end to the Cuban Missile Crisis, through that kind of third-party intervention. And so Castro was like really being a nice guy with the U.S., unlike him, until about 3 months later, darling President Ronald Reagan decided Radio Free Europe was such a success with communist Europe, he started a thing called Radio Marti to broadcast anti-communist, pro-American messages to the Cuban mainland, and Castro went back to his old ways. But clearly Baba had a hand in nudging that forward and planting that seed, which finally bore fruit when Obama was president. What else? The Palestinian Rights Committee they liked me. They clearly liked me. And they had frequent meetings. It's the Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People. And so we use the shorthand Palestinian Rights Committee. They had meetings in New York, but they also had a lot of seminars and meetings around the world. And they often requested me. And I know why, because I took the same approach as I did with the political committee of the General Assembly when I first started. I was not looking to do a journalistic, newsy story. I really tried to bring out what both sides were saying. One time, they had as a guest speaker Moshe Dayan's daughter, the general, the Israeli general. And although she had issues with her father, she was also very much a proud Israeli. And the tension in the air, the hatred. There's so much hatred that you could see from eons. But I produced thorough and fair press releases. Now that got me into trouble when I happened to be in India, when in Mondley Hall, when Erich started to was talking, and then Merwan said, tell them about what happened. And Erich is going, no, Erich, you must tell them. No. Erich, you've got to tell them what happened that day. And Erich says, well, I guess Baba has brought about the time to bring this out. And Erich told the story of Baba shortly before he dropped his body. I believe it was in Mondley Hall, but I think that's what he said. But he said Baba was sitting there, and he suddenly put his hands over his mouth and went like that. I can't do it as strong as it was. It gave me goosebumps. I'll try something like that. And everyone is like, whoa. And at some point, Erich says, true to his promise, he has broken his silence. And Baba, if you know and stay with God, Baba gave a special discourse. Now, breaking of his silence means so many things on so many levels. But on one level, that was absolutely true, because Baba said, all of creation comes out of the primal oceanic And when I break my silence, it will be to utter that with my human mouth. And that's what he had done. He did So on that level, it was to me, it was like, it didn't matter if Baba had ever done it this way or that way. But it was nice, reassuring that, yes, he said that he would do that, and that's what he did. It doesn't mean the inner meaning of breaking his silence, the primal and all, And other people had different views about it. Other Mandali. They all had their own opinions about it. But we got out of Mondley Hall. Nadia had been recording the session. And when he started talking about it, someone said, flip it over, just start, tape over whatever you have. This is important. And so she had a recording of the whole thing. And everybody wanted copies. They're asking, can you give me a copy? Can I get a copy? And because of my experience at the UN, I had to be able to, I would have a tape, but I would, from my own notes, I would have to be able to do it. And I would just refer the summary of a press conference. And I just used the tape for backup. In this case, with a dozen people on the bench outside Mondley Hall, around the bench, everyone heard something different. And I know what Erich said. I remembered clearly, because as if I had a report on it. And so I said to her, I don't want the tape, but can I borrow it overnight? I want to make a transcript. And she said, okay. And I happened to have, never happened before or since, I think, I happened to have a private room in the Pilgrim Center. So I was able to stay up late and write the whole transcript. Later, the word was going around. People were coming back after me, and everyone had a different story. And I happened to mention that I had this transcript, and Nosh heard about it and he wanted it, and I said, if you get permission. He said, I already have blanket permission. And I said, well, let me write the story, because Alaba feels this way. Bao had come around to talk about Baba's silence in a different framework. Mani was, I said, let me write the framework so that it tells that everybody has a different take on this. And he said, okay, but when he published it, he just said, true to his silence, true to his word, he has broken his silence. And we got in such trouble with Mani and with Erich. He got a letter from Erich saying, you and Tony Paterniti did that, this, and you and Tony Paterniti did that, and you and Tony, and I mean, I knew I had done my best here, and I got a letter from Mani, and I'm thinking, oh, a letter from Mani. I was so excited, and I opened it up, and she says, I wonder if you know how much trouble you've caused in the whole Baba world through your irresponsible actions. Not only did you take this thing, but then you drummed it around to all the other centers and blah, blah. And then, I'm saying, my God, this sounds like Anna Rosa. That's the woman who taken over the society. I said, this sounds like Anna Rosa. And then she writes, I'm sorry if I'm talking to you in Anna Rosa fashion, but it seems that's the only person you can understand. And I was like, this was such a test from Baba, because I knew I was clean with Baba. I was totally clean. I had done everything to make sure he had permission, all this, and I could write the story to make sure it was balanced. I had done everything. I knew I was okay with Baba. Mani was pissed. So I wrote back, and I tried to explain it, but I knew I explained would not work. So I quoted a Jim Reeves song. I won't take the guitar now because time is, but it's a song called Guilty that Baba liked. And the lyric went like this: I've been accused, convicted, and condemned. The trial's over, and now I face the end. Is this your way of telling me we're through, when all I'm guilty of is loving you? You were the judge, the jury, all in one. You found me guilty, and now my term's begun. I must confess, I've never been untrue, and all I'm guilty of is loving you, and now I'm losing you, for things I didn't do. Please let your heart consider and appeal, for now you know exactly how I feel. Don't punish me for things I didn't do, when all I'm guilty of is loving you. And Ronnie writes back, see, this was Baba wanting me to be able to hold on to what was my truth in him, even if the Mandali was saying something different, even if those who I trusted and more than anyone, right? So Mani wrote back, your love has never been in question, so my heart says okay, but my mind still says no, K, because after all, you were the one who did this, that. And I thought, well, okay, you know, what can I do? I'm okay with Baba. I'd like to be okay with Mani. But 2 years later, I go back to India. I have just had this, I put my love life in Baba's hand, and Bob, the first step in Baba answering that blew me out of the water. That's all I'll say at this point. And it connects to the song Mercy. But I get back to India, and everybody is, and I want to just talk about this with Baba in the Samadhi, this relationship that he created, clearly wanted me to pursue, go along with, and the way it turned out. And I didn't tell anyone else, but I was there mainly for that, to heal and to talk to Baba about what he wanted. But all I hear whenever a resident comes my way, wow, you're here. You must be very brave to come here. I mean, after all that thing with the silence day and the thing, and I was shocked because I wasn't thinking about that. I knew I was clean. Finally, I get to MeherSepas. Now I'm a little trepidation about this. Erich, see, there's a session. Everyone goes out. I wait to talk to Erich. He's with someone. Finally, that person leaves. He looks at me and he says, "It's you!" And he puts his arm up like this to strangle me. And then gives me a big Baba bear hug and a smile and a laugh. I said, good, I'm okay with Erich. Then I go to Baba's porch. Mani is there. The session ends. She comes down the stairs. I said, Jai Baba, Mani. She said very, very formally, she said, Jai Baba, I've had a close relationship with Mani. I could tell a whole bunch of stories. for her to go, Jay Baba, this was like, fuck. Sorry, my language. You know, I walked back towards Mondley Hall, and I said, Baba, well, I know I'm okay with you. I'd like to be okay with Monty also, but as long as I'm okay with you. And a few hours later, I'm out on the veranda. We're all getting ready to leave. Monty sees me, and she says, "Oh, Jay Baba," and she gives me a big hug. Now, I had lost about 60 pounds between then and the previous time I had seen her. She said, "I didn't recognize you." So when she was looking at me like she didn't know who I was, she didn't know who I was. And she gives me a big, so I was okay with Monty. Is that the same story? Yeah, it's got to be the same. So, Mercy. I got to India. I said I would get to this. I got to India coming down the hill from the Baba Samadhi with this relationship thing in my mind, and I was really, and I Baba Samadhi after Arti, and I have the guitar still around my neck, and I'm not going to play it now, but as I'm walking, without thinking, I find myself strumming. And at some point, and I'm listening, I said, that is beautiful. And at some point, it's like Baba is saying, just keep playing it all the way down the hill. I want you to remember this. So I did. And the next day, I went into the music room in the Pilgrim Center, and there was a comic book by Mark DeMatteis, famous comic book writer, Baba lover. And it was called Mercy. And it's about these 3 or 4 different characters, each of their stories. In different walks of life, they have a personal relationship with the goddess Mercy. And the story that it ends with is the prince of an Aboriginal tribe who also has a close relationship with Mercy, goddess Mercy. And he's being chased through the woods, through the forest, by a fierce crowd, and they finally catch him, and they set up a fire, and they bind him to a stake in the middle of this, I forget what you call that, the fire. Anyway, and Mercy is there, and he's like, aren't you going to help me, you know? And she's not doing anything, and they light the fire, and suddenly he's being consumed, this fire, he's being completely burned up, and he's going, Mercy, I've trusted you, I've always trusted, now I'm going to die here, what are you going? And sure enough, he was burnt up, and he died. And in the very next instant was reborn as the king of that tribe. And it really summed up the relationship that I was in India at that time to really talk about with Baba, because that's kind of similar to what happened for me. So anyway, I walk from the music room in the Pilgrim Center to the Rahuri cabin, and there's a guitar. And as I recall, I may have had a tape recorder with me, and I put it on, but 5 minutes later, Mercy was there. All the lyrics just came pouring out. And then skip some time to my last visit to Mehersad, and my taxi is waiting, but I've gone to go to Baba's porch. Mani has the flu. She's in her bedroom. I don't know if I knew that when I got to the porch. I didn't realize how close she was. Maybe I didn't, or did. But I played Mercy. It was a new song, and I think it was Mira Lutkendorf, someone who was playing the violin, joined in, and the song just soared. It lifted. It levitated the porch in a way. It was just astonishing. When Baba steps into a song that you're singing, it's a thing. So we all said goodbye. I was heading off towards, I'm halfway, like by Mayor's Garden, towards the back of Mondley Hall to meet my taxi. And Casey Cook comes running after me. She had been in there with Mani. She said, Mani wants me to tell you that's what the big doctor ordered. Which is a wonderful. That's a good review. That's a very good review. And Casey goes back, and I'm now not running to get out because I'm like, whoa. And she comes running back a second time. Monty said, "Tell Tony not to worry about a thing." Now, no one knew what the story was about. I hadn't told anyone, but I'm thinking, oh, great, because now this woman would not see me, wouldn't talk to me, and I was respecting that. But then she was telling people I was stalking. It was weird, weird, weird. And here Monty is saying, don't worry about a thing. Basically, everything's going to work out fine. Well, it did, except it got worse. It got much worse. But it did work out fine in the sense that I had put my love life in Baba's hand, and the series of events, beginning with that relationship, led directly to connecting with Zeke in a relationship that Baba had clearly planned right from the start. And she had also put her love life into Baba's hands. And it's not anything I imagined as a relationship. It's a Baba relationship, which is like a whole different thing. I mean, it's wonderful. There's so much love, yet there's independence, and there's conflict, and it's beautiful. So the song is Mercy, and Meher has taken some photos and used a version of me singing that.
Mercy, that is your name. I call you Mercy, that's why you came. A gentle feeling that's harder than steel. You are revealing all the love I conceal. With mercy so real, with mercy so real, you are the ocean inside this drop, within this seedling, you are the crop. I call you fire, healing rain, unbound desire, regardless of pain. Mercy is your name. You have on one when I rail and attack, relentlessly healing what I think I lack. You are giving back, you are giving When I am sleeping, you call my name. When I am weeping, you cool the rain. When I am burning, you hold my hand. And when I'm turning, you understand. It's what you have planned. When I am dreaming, you make it sweet. When I am loving, 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 you make it complete. When I am laughing, you're like the waterfall. And when I'm crashing, you soften the fall. Mercy to you
well, I'll just say one other thing. I was covering the World Conference for children, the first World Conference for children in UN in New York, and I had an all area pass for the whole weekend, and all I was to do was cover press conferences, and there were none. So I was free to mingle with George Bush, Secretary of State Baker, Margaret Thatcher. I think Mandela was. I did meet Mandela at another occasion, shook hands and stuff. But all of these people, and everyone's so excited, and even my colleagues, like, what a big deal, you're around just mingling practically. But it was Saturday and Sunday, and when I got in on Sunday, I was thinking, so what, Baba? I mean, yeah, it's a lot of big shots and a big deal and a big, but I said, unless I feel your hand in this, what does it mean to me? Nothing, I said, and I'm walking out from the press office to the elevator, which is right across from the entrance to the Security Council. And because of all these heads of state and foreign ministers being so close together, they took advantage of the opportunity to meet with people that they would never ordinarily even talk to. And one of those was right there, Edward Shevardnadze, the second in command in the Soviet Union, who actually was the person who interested Gorbachev in glasnost and perestroika, the opening to the West and the restructuring of the country. So he was speaking to the Israeli foreign minister in a private room near the Security Council. Major opening of connections. And he steps out, and all of the reporters are crowded around a big, massive, a large area. And I'm kind of up on the next level to take the escalator down from where my office is. And I just stopped to look. And again, I'm saying to Baba, unless I feel your hand in this, what does it mean to me? I said, and what can I do that's going to matter? And I thought, well, I can do one thing. And so standing there, just watching this from way on the outside, I started internally saying, Meher Baba, Meher Baba, Meher Baba. Outwardly still, but Meher Baba. Shevardnadze, from way the hell across the room, all these reporters, mics in his face, looks up at me like he's recognized me. And it's clearly his recognizing Baba's name. And he looks for quite a while. And when he kind of registers it, then he sees all the reporters there again. He says, okay, that's all. Go, finished. And the next afternoon, I saw him. All the heads of state were coming down the hallway from the General Assembly towards the Security Council area. And we all had to back up to let them pass. And he was on the other side. He saw me. He waves like this, like to an old pal. And when Soviet Union breaks up, and he winds up as the president of Georgia, and I'm covering the Security Council meeting, which was meeting in a different room because repairs were going on, and I didn't get to see Shevardnadze if he left or what. And I turned to my assistant and I said, "Did you see him? Is he still here?" And he said he went that way. And I looked around, and he's at the other door about to leave. He sees me looking at him. He turns around and he goes, "Hi." What do I know? All I know is he was the key person behind glasnost and perestroika, the opening to the West and the restructuring of the Soviet Union. And he recognized, from my point of view, he recognized Baba's name. The other one was Jesse Jackson. The Baba button I wore is the one on the big discourses. It's from like 1938, 40, I don't know, long black hair. I wore that picture of Baba a lot. And many people thought it was Lech Walesa, the head of Solidarity in Poland. And there's a whole thing about people see, Baba said, he who knows everything displaces nothing. To each one I appear to be what he thinks I am. And I have discovered, just by wearing his button all the time, that when someone recognizes him, it's really interesting who they think he is, because it says how they see God. I mean, even the most far out version being someone who thought he was Ron Jeremy, a very famous porn star who was reputed to be very well endowed. And it was the idea of God as the primal power, the Shiva Lingam, It's staggering. So Lech Walesa, many people saw him, Baba, as Lech Walesa, someone who stood for truth in a system that was all based on lies. So Jesse Jackson's doing a press conference about Namibia's independence. which it had just gotten, and he keeps looking at me. I'm the first seat near the speaker in those press conferences. And I'm trying to get the notes quickly because I have a meeting before and a meeting after. And I can't even pay attention to why he's looking at me. But it's unnerving. And the meeting ends. What happens then? The press goes and they talk to the person. They never do what he did at that point. He walks over to me, puts his hand out, shakes mine. He says, "Pleased to meet you." I said, "Pleased to meet you." It only occurred to me when I ran to lunch before my next meeting that he's seeing Lech Walensa's picture. Oh, in his talk, he's talking about Namibia, and out of the blue, South Africa, Namibia, right? Nothing to do with Poland. He says, out of the blue, he says, Lech Walesa could live any place he likes. And I'm writing it down. What does that have to do with anything? Lech Walesa can send his children to school anywhere he likes. And I'm writing, okay. Lech Walesa can travel wherever he likes. And he does a few more of those, and he says, Namibia has its independence, but it's still not free. And I thought that's the craziest damn thing I ever heard, that he's talking about Lech Walesa in the midst of this thing on. But that was why, because he was taken by my picture. And so I told people Jesse Jackson spoke about Baba at the UN, but he called him thought he was Lech Walesa. So a point came in 1996. When all these people, Baba friends, some very close to Baba, got in touch with me and asked if I could give them a tour of the UN, an informal tour of the UN. One was Meher that she was just talking about. Another was Shireen, I believe. Shireen or her mother. It was Shireen, I think. Linwood Sawyer, Gary Blythe. There were quite a few. I don't remember them all now. But it was like every 2 weeks, every week or 2, 3 weeks, someone else wanted to come. And it was clearly Baba. I had no idea. And what I do, I take them to the cafeteria. We'd sit or have something there, and I'd take them on a tour. I'd say, here's the meeting, so here's the General Assembly, here's the Security Council. No big deal. I couldn't really take them into the meeting rooms. And the last one, the biggest one of all, was Havovi. And Havovi was shimmering. I mean, that's the way I remember it, because I'm taking her on this tour, but her presence, her Baba presence, is just filling the air wherever she goes. It's like a Disney movie, where the sparkles are coming off as she passes by. And we get up to the second floor, and at some point she has to use the bathroom. So we're waiting there I'm showing the statue that Nigeria contributed to the UN. Anyway, so she goes in to use the bathroom. We're waiting for quite a while. When she finally comes out, she's talking to someone that she had met in there. It was the Russian ambassador. They had become fast friends. It was the Russian ambassador's wife. and like they were like Baba best buddies from way back. So it was an amazing thing. Now, at the same time, related to another string of stories that has nothing to do with the UN particularly, but I had gotten arrested for DUI. I had a pretty rough year related to that former relationship, and part of the time I was acting out a bit, and I had to take some class, and the class would not be finished until August. And meanwhile, Mani was ill, and everyone said Mani's on her way out. She's on her way out, and I was going to take my daughter for the first time. She could come she was over 7 at that point. She was 9, I guess. And I'm inwardly saying, Mani, wait for me. Mani, wait for me. Mani, wait for me. Now, if I had been able to go when I wanted, I would not have seen Mani, because she was in her room and no one was allowed to see her. She was in a coma, and they say coma. She was going to Baba. She was internally going to Baba. That's how I see it. In a kind of samadhi state, So, but the date came, and I was able to go. And I get the day we get to the Pilgrim Center, I ask Ann, Dr. Ann, we are fast friends from first sight. I think we were with Baba together in the 20s or 30s, something like that, because there's that kind of connection. And I said, "What's going on with Monty? How's she doing?" She said, "Well, most of us feel that she should have gone a long time ago, and that she's waiting for someone. And when that person comes, then she'll go." And she told about, I think it was Gaimai, a similar situation, and she was clearly Gary. She was close with Gary Kleiner, and Kleiner was somewhere else in India on some side trip, and she waited until Gary got back. And after she saw Gary, then she went. I didn't associate that with me saying, "Monty, wait for me." But the next day I get to Mehersad. The Mandalay, no one at the UN really thought of me as the UN man. Well, there's one thing. There had been the chemical plant near the UN that was threatening to pollute and poison Mehersad and environs. And they had said, contact anyone you can. They put a general word out to get to the government to step in. There was corruption going on. And I can't, they said, you work at the UN, but you can't go to heads of state, ambassadors of countries. They're my boss. It's breaking a line. I did know the ambassador from India, Garakan, his name was. I did recognize him. He probably would have recognized me because always in the Security Council chamber, I was in the middle there. But it just so happened that around that time, he had resigned from the Indian Foreign Ministry and took a job working as a special advisor to the Secretary General at the UN. So now, in terms of protocol, I was free to write to him. And I wrote to him about this situation. It's a major site of pilgrimage. These people are very important people. Many Westerners come, not to mention the local people who are being poisoned, but Westerners will be coming and blah, 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 blah. And I never heard any more about it. But the next time I went to India, somehow the government got involved. And next time I got to India, they said they got word that someone at the UN was making trouble with the government. So it must have been Garakan responding to that note. But apart from that, no one thought of me as a UN person. Well, Bauji wanted me to get him to talk at the UN, but that was later. So it was unusual. When I walked up now on this trip before Mani's passing to Mehersad, not many people on the porch, but Goher sees me, and even from a bit of a distance, she says, the UN man. That was puzzling. She said, and it was like she had a message to deliver. She said, 3 weeks ago, when Mani was sleeping, which was the coma, which was really this samadhi state, whatever it is, she said, she suddenly opened her eyes, lifted her head, looked at me, and said, "Now I have finished my work at the UN." Then closed her eyes and went back into the coma. And I mean, I feel it was Baba speaking through Mani. Clearly it was Baba speaking, but maybe it was Baba and Mani as one speaking. I don't know, but it was Baba. When I look back, 3 weeks earlier was when Havovi had come. So that culminating visit of all these people who I had taken on tours of the UN had been at that time Mani did this. And when I got back to New York, there had been major negotiations on a nuclear weapons treaty, a comprehensive nuclear weapons treaty. For years they'd been trying to do it, and it was so close. India was one of the big holdouts. Well, around that time when I was in India, I guess, India kind of gave in a little bit, and the negotiations went forward, and soon there was a draft. When I got back to New York, there was already a draft before the first committee to go to the General Assembly. The treaty was adopted. It was open for signature at the next General Assembly a year later. So that was a big thing, which you could connect with Mani's words. The very next morning, I was at Arti, morning Arti. I didn't usually go in the morning, but I was at morning Arti. And right after Arti was started or was about to start, I felt this big whoosh, like coming out of Baba's Samadhi. I didn't know what to make of it. It was an internal thing, but it was like it was tangible thing of wind. And 10, 15 minutes later, Alan, who had run up the hill said Monty has just gone to Baba. And we got to be there to see her laid out in Mondley Hall. She was more alive than any time I had seen her when she was alive. Her skin was shining, the light that was shining. We were there for the cremation. We were there for other, and I thought the only thing is we weren't here to see we were there for the interment, but we were not there to see them put the marble on top. And the day we were returning, I all my luggage was in the taxi. I said, "Well, please go up to Baba's Samadhi first." I always liked that to be my last stop. My daughter and I came up, and just as we got there, they were putting the marble. So not only did Monty wait for me, she gave me the whole four-course dinner, you know. But yeah, so now I have finished my work at the UN.
Neat.
There was so much that was so pertinent that I'm just grateful. I did call. I did get the number, and I called Arsenio and left a message that you were giving your talk, and you had given it at MeherSepas, and it was just so interesting. So many things, and one thing that's so important for me is that pleasing the mandali as opposed to what you feel is pleasing Baba, because the mandali always said, don't look to us, look to Baba, look within. And now it's a time where they're not around, and it's so loud to look within. To look within. So I thank you for sharing this. Yeah. These things are painful, I mean, it's just like being pulled in two directions.
Well, and it so deepened my connection with Monty. Even though it was like, I mean, that's a big thing to connect
my
over.
God.
She was pissed, and I had to stand, with Baba on it. It was.
Oh yeah, no, she was I remember things with her where she was so much Baba's, like when she'd tell a story about Baba and the life, it was just like Baba just was there. But it was like, but she was a force, but Baba is Baba. And so at times I had to go within me because I don't want to displease Mani, but on the other hand, more critical what Baba was telling me, whatever, to whatever extent I could hear,
When she heard what Erich had said about Baba breaking his silence, everyone had a different reaction, and hers, it's like she became a child again, and she told the story of how she made Baba promise that she would be there when he broke his silence. So this couldn't be true, and it, this is one of the reasons I had said to Nashwan, you have to let me write the article around it, because Bauji had a much more esoteric aspect of it, and Alaba. I mean, Alaba later was calling calling Nashwan the anti-God man.
Oh,
But I knew that it would not be. I was skeptical about him not having permission, but he had apparently blanket permission for anything said in Monley Hall. But this was big, and I needed. It was important to have that. But on the other hand, I think it was important from Baba's point of view to create a big stir. So what could we do? We could do our best, get all these lessons in the process, but But poor Mani, I mean, she was mad at Erich. I could tell at the time in India. And Erich didn't want to say it. Then Merwan was pushing her, and he finally goes, I guess Baba has brought about this time to let it out. Or otherwise he would have kept it to the grave, Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And Baba's setting it up so that Monty is being very cold and aloof with me, which
Yeah.
was so unusual because she didn't know it was me. She
Oh
didn't
my God.
recognize me, because of the weight
Wow.
loss.
Wow.
But that's Baba also. How are you still okay with this? Are you? And I did. I walked away. I said, Baba, you know, I'd like to be okay with Monty, but I know I'm okay with you, which is what
Yeah.
matters. Yeah.
Wow. Whoa.
This was so full, Tony. It's just like a feast of, wow. It'll be nice to be able to go back over this and
Well,
yeah.
and very, very big thanks to Mayor Naz,
Mm.
and Afshin, her husband, who does a lot of work with it. It's a wonderful site they have. I I have a problem that she cut out the rest of the prayer, but and I felt that was something we'd agreed on. But it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking work. It's wonderful, and I know Baba is pleased with that. Very pleased with that.
Well, you made up for it. And
Well, yeah, but I left. I
Barbara,
did. I left out beloved God.
Barbara's joke.
That's part of the. We'll
Wow.
get a good version of that out. The one that I recorded at RT, I was
Oh,
singing
okay.
to Baba inside of me, rather than singing to Baba
Uh,
as if Baba's sitting here, And to release something, it should be as if you're singing to Baba here, and I
yeah.
was not, you
Yeah.
know. So we'll get a good one. We'll get a good
Tony,
one.
what do you make of your relationship with Shevardnadze? What was that recognition? What was that?
Just what I said, I don't know. He recognized Baba's name. How I've never spoken to him about it. I mean, I don't know if he's still alive. He went on to be the president of Georgia. I know he had some difficulties in his own country, opposition, but I haven't followed his life that close. The fact that he's the guy who opened up,
Mm.
who was Gorbachev got all the credit for Glasnost opening to the West and Perestroika, the restructuring of the Soviet Union, but he was the silent voice behind it that was pushing Gorbachev in that
Mm.
direction. And he has a Baba connection. Whatever it is, I don't know.
Did
But for
you
him,
speak to him ever? Did you
no,
exchange words? No,
no,
never.
we just always like we were already old friends. You don't have to say anything.
Tony, there's a real important short quote by Baba that is real so meaningful to me. It says, "Hold on to my demise. Remember that I love you so that you can reflect my love." And I like that, and I thought, what does that mean? What does that mean? But it is true, like you said. Havovi was shimmering. Well, in our way, whatever, people can pick out Baba lovers. And it's just that you're holding on to Baba. And it's not what you say necessarily, but it's that connection. I could see it very strongly in your life and in a very public position Baba placed him. But for all of us, he has us exactly where he wants us. And it was the same with Phyllis Frederick. She applied for a job at Mattel to come to California, and there was a stack. It was a 12 inches higher of applicants, and she got the job. And she knew it was Baba. She says, wow, that was Baba. I mean, highly competitive. People wanted to go to California for Mattel. But I mean, just something like that, Baba puts you where he wants you.
Well, that would have been the last thing I would have wanted to think. All I knew was clearly he wanted me to be there, but any other meaning than that, no. It was like I'm remembering Baba. That's all I'm doing. That's where I am. That's where he's put me. But that message through Monty, that's where I had to say, okay, I guess so. You're definitely doing something through this, some work.
Say it again, Tony.
Tony,
Say
What's
it
that?
again. Say what she
Tony.
said.
Now I have finished my work at the UN.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tony, everyone, one time I saw Pindu shimmer You know what when?
Hmm.
He was trying to get across the compound in time to get to the bathroom. So when you just said Havovi had to go to the bathroom, I thought, what a coincidence about
No, no.
shimmering.
She was shimmering. And this was as she was walking through the halls and everything, and then she happened to go use them. It wasn't like she shimmered into the bathroom.
She was so glamorous. My golly, she
Yeah.
was just stunning. And her, wow.
She still is. She still
You
is.
might have been doing some bathroom diplomacy there.
Clearly, clearly.
Tony,
I doubt Havovi was thinking, oh, let me make friends with the wife of the Russian ambassador. They were just there, got to a conversation, the bathroom, Yeah. Wonderful.
Tony-
That's his lovers wait till they shimmer.
Tony,
I want to tell you,
who was it again that redirected you after the Northeast Gathering? I forget his name. To take the test, take the test, take the UN
Chris
test.
Rieger.
Chris
Rieger.
Rieger. Yeah, and what connection do you have with him? You didn't even know him, did you?
No. Chris was in the
No.
society. Chris was in the
Oh,
society.
he was.
We
Oh.
did shows together. No, and that's why he was one of the many ex-society people who happened to be there for this first Northeast
Wow.
gathering.
Wow. Wow.
But
Wow.
that was an unusual thing. That was very unusual. I was like, I was kind of in. I didn't say it, but like, what are you nuts? But at some point it dawned on me. This was Baba speaking in him, and he was feeling it that strongly. I might be missing it. Maybe Baba wants me to hear it, and I'm not hearing it. So he's got Chris. What's it going to hurt to go back and take the exam again?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I was happy to. I was not sure about reading Ralph and the Red Herring, but I'm glad I did, because Baba with me has been very playful and expressive. Very, very. It's given me lots of stories, and I've got to live longer because there's so much. I started writing and then I get distracted.
Who was the Ralph? Well, he wasn't the same as who was that?
No, he's Ralph. His name is Ralph Ireland. He's someone who worked at the UN.
Yeah. All right.
Ireland. That was his last name?
Yeah.
Ireland?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Anybody else? And this has been a great session.
Even as they knew you, Tony, he may have been connected. He may have been related to Jill Ireland.
Maybe.
You know the famous,
I probably shouldn't even have mentioned his name on this, but yeah, but it's just someone who worked at the UN.
I'll be quiet. Yeah.
Hey, Tony, what about your first wife and how that ended? What? I'm trying to recall it, and I thought, how did you
No,
get to it?
that's not part of the story. No, that it just did. It just did. I mean, it was like, but we were separated from.
You weren't married, but it never became a marriage. Is that right?
No, see, that's what if you're asking about the woman in the experience that I had with Baba, the one who I didn't marry.
Yeah.
The one who I didn't marry. Yeah, she. I tried to get in touch with her some years back, 5 years ago. I found a mutual friend on Facebook, and she didn't want me to, so I didn't. I really wanted. What I wanted at the time was her permission to, because I was going to publish a version of that story, and I hadn't written it yet. And I'm going to be careful that whatever I might say that's personal or that not to include.
Yeah.
I wound up publishing that a version of a very concise version in verse lines, so it's easy to read, last year on Amazon. So if you look up, don't look up the title, because apparently there are 8 million books called Playing with Fire. But look up my name, Tony Paterniti, on Amazon, and it's called Playing with Fire. And the fire is, when you feel cold and sit by the fire, it drives out your cold, makes you, Baba is fire. So,
Yeah.
but it's a too popular title for fiction. But and I changed the names, so I called her Celeste in that story, and I called myself Caliano because
Wow.
I mean I'm gonna have to do a version of this, the one I'm writing. I've been writing. I had to stop for months because of this thing we saw today. It shifted my attention, but I'm gonna have to use real names, I think, for the most part, unless there's something really too personal, or yeah.
Tony, speaking of Baba is fire, when I was there in 2000, no, well, there was a group, 22 people from Argentina, truly on fire. And they wrote this song, if you've never heard it, but it says, No olvides el fuego, porque el fuego es el amor. Don't forget the fire, for the fire is love. And I get back to Myrtle Beach, and it was almost like the theme song for me. It was so beautiful, this group, and they'd sit in the aisles at the, what was the spiritual retreat then, and they'd compose, and it was dancing and this and that. But I wish you've got to hear this. You just got to hear this song because it's a
We can send it to you.
We'll
if you
send
haven't
it to
seen
you,
if you haven't
Tony.
seen it.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be
Yeah,
great. I one year in India, when I was with the society, Gary Nedswick was reading something from one of Balnatu's books, and it was a poem called "Love Is an Ocean of Fire." And I wound up setting it to. I'll play a little bit. It's not.
Yeah.
But we wound up doing it in English and then translating it into French and then singing it again in English. But it's just this. Love is a strange binding. It binds and it unwinds. The more you bind yourself to your beloved, the greater freedom you will find. But such love is very, very rare. Love is an ocean of fire. Love is an ocean of fire that you have to cross to meet your beloved. That you have to cross to meet your beloved. Love is an ocean of fire, is an ocean of fire, is an ocean of fire. Love is an ocean of fire. 1, 2, 3, 4, l'amour. And then it's all in French. Est-il un étranger? Il y est-il déroulé? Anyway,
Wow.
Don Stevens' friend Claude helped us translate it into French. Le peu que vous vouliez au bien-aimé, la plus grande sera votre liberté. Mais cet amour est très, très rare. L'amour est en ocean de feu. L'amour est en ocean de feu que vous devez traverser pour rencontrer votre bien-aimé. Well, anyway, kind of like that.
Beautiful.
But Tony, I wanted to add this. When I got back to Myrtle Beach after hearing this song, and I had to have it, and there was a giant fire across from the center. It was, and Larry Parrish and Rita had to evacuate their house, and they stayed at on the center for a while.
Oh,
But
wow.
big cinders were blowing over from the fire. It wasn't not across the street, but it was
across the waterway.
across the waterway. But still, yeah.
That reminds me of Monty's cremation. Oh my.
Ah,
You've never seen anything. And you know the story, some fakir or something was
yeah.
passing by,
They-
and he asked whose cremation. He said because it was just white smoke pouring out, which is the sign of some great soul.
Yeah.
And Eric said, yeah. Indeed.
Wow.
They're Baba's sister.
Hey, Tony, I got in just when you were into the story of Eric, and when about copying the tape where he said about Baba breaking his silence, and that article. That article, when I first came and stayed on the center, I read that article at that time, and it was didn't he promise Francis that Francis would be present, and Francis was present in that meeting? Is that right?
I believe Francis was present. Yeah.
Yeah, and was it the when he covered, he was just doing the the M sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what? Remind me if you just remind me how did Erich express that?
Just like that.
Held
And-
his mouth.
yeah,
I can't do it. It was
And-
Was it loud like
it
that?
was very loud, and
Yeah.
something in me jumped. Something in me.
Ah,
Yeah.
who jumped?
he-
Something inside of me jumped when
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah,
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. When
it was
Erich
a startling sound. Startling.
when Erich did it, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and was the and then when he told the story again, what did he say about it that Baba afterwards said that he was breaking his silence?
No. Eric said that.
Oh,
True to
okay.
his promise, he has broken his silence. But see, this is where I had a problem, and I could see why Nosh got that letter. You and Tony Paterniti,
Yeah,
because it was sensationalizing it. And it's not.
Yeah.
Baba's breaking his silence is something so much more profound
Yeah.
than that.
Yeah.
That's part of it. I just thought, isn't it nice? He said that physically it would take that form. And
Yeah.
he did. And it was like, why didn't you tell us this before?
Remind you,
The modeling,
what prompted Baba to do that? Do you what did he say? What prompted him to? Do you remember? What was the subject?
Do
He
you
has a
have,
mind of his own.
do you have Stay with God?
Certainly not with me. No.
No,
You got
no, that's no, but it's one of the, I think, 3 discourses that Baba gave Francis to include with Stay with God, and he just describes when I break my silence. He talks about the primal oceanic
yeah.
all things in creation come from that primal oceanic and that's not at this level. He said, but when I break my silence, it will be to utter that primal oceanic with my human mouth.
That actually is the final consonant in Om, which is the 7th shadow of the the sound, and that it's also the bindu. It talks about the bindu point, which is transition between the unmanifest and the manifest. And in terms of speech, M is formed by the lips, was at the transition between the outer. So it
between what? Say it again, Jonathan.
the unmanifest aspects of speech, which are the vocalizations, are within the mouth. But that's why a baby first can say mama and baba, because they can see the action of the lips to make a sound. They know they can. So anyway, but
Are we still recording, by the way?
It's in Stay with God.
No, I say, are we still recording?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because it doesn't say it on my screen, so I was wondering.
We
Just fine.
are.
It's
Yeah,
it's
we're
an
recording.
interesting
Yes.
conversation. That's why I'm wondering. It's good that it is. I just came across this book, and I don't know much about it, but it's called Yuga Shift, and it's this fellow who goes through ancient Indian writings, Aztec writings, Native American writings on the cycles of time. And according to this guy, the Kali Yuga ends this March.
Oh, wow.
Now, I mean, he does say the cycle goes for, I assume it goes like around 1,000 or so years, but then there's 200 when it starts and 200 when it ends. It doesn't like on March 31st we're gonna go,
Tony,
oh wow, look at that.
Tony, or the Ides of March.
Well, the Ides of March.
Let's make
But
it sensational.
something is in the air. I mean, I
Yeah.
sometimes
Oh,
listen
yeah.
to on Facebook, not Facebook, on YouTube. There's some intuitives will come on,
Yeah.
And there's definitely, I think we are at that point where Baba's
Yeah.
manifestation is now kicking into
Oh, yeah.
hyperdrive. Yeah, especially this, and nothing will be the same. Like,
Yeah.
someone was comparing an astrologer. This was not, he wasn't talking about yugas, but just what's going on now.
Yeah.
Being comparable, the last time there was anything even close to this was in the early 1500s, and life totally. I mean, Gutenberg's Bible, the printing press, communication, all, and he said a similar version, but much less, is from 1895 to 1910. In 1895, people used horse and buggies and lamps, kerosene lamps, and by 1910 they had cars and electricity. So this shift that he was talking about is way beyond that. So
well,
the way we think,
Baba's taking us from rationality to age of reason to the age of intuition. That is mega jump, mega. Yeah.
Yep. And there are three major planets, slow-moving planets, are changing signs this year.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, like 3 of the newly discovered ones out in the Kuiper Belt are also changing signs. This is like massive shift in consciousness. What it's going to look like, I don't know, but it's like, hold on.
Yeah.
Baba, hold on.
Maybe it looks like we might be getting along and sometime in the near future.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we'll see. It seems like that there's some, and even from what Baba said, that there's some shock. There is some, like, the transition doesn't come like as a jolly thing.
Yeah.
That there is some really disturbing transition,
One thing though, Tony, is this transition to intuition, which I think I kind of think it as a pandemic, as the people looked first to Baba and he said, "I'm not this body," and then they looked to the Mandali and the Mandali said, "Now don't look to us, look to Baba." And now who do we look to? And the pandemic to me was the worldwide experience of telling people, look, you can't go to a bar, you can't go to a church, you can't go to a sports event. You've got to deal with your own situation, whatever your family or whatever the situation is. And people had to look inwardly for strength. And to me, the shift is going to be the more people look inwardly into the intuition, because in the heart, love, there's a calmness that can come when you disengage from the external. And then if you get established in that inner calm, when you look out, it's easier to see that Baba, in all the good things and in all the bad things, is working as well to draw everything back to himself.
Yeah.
And whatever happens on the outside, as he said, has to happen. No one's at fault. He works through it all.
Yeah.
But I have this favorite saying. It says, Baba said he would manifest. I take it this is a manifestation, not tomorrow. He didn't say what, but he dropped his body, so it's happening. But the thing is, I say, but he never said it was going to be easy, ever. Yeah.
Zeke, my wife Zeke, has, I haven't heard this from her for a long time. Oh, there she is. From her for a long time. But every once in a while she would burst out in song. Baba said there'd be days like this, there'd be days like this. My Baba said, Baba said, Baba said, Baba said.
And you know, Monty used to like that song, Those Were the Days, my friend. She'd
Oh, yeah.
request it. But, you know, this might be the good old days. You know what I mean? We don't know what tomorrow will hold, you know, as far as challenges.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, you know, at this point, um, I'm 72,
Mhm.
and I'm just now getting through dealing with this sudden burst of awareness of mortality.
Oh, yeah.
You know, ailments of the body, people, famous people, Baba lover friends passing like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and 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 it's different. You can be at peace with all that stuff when you're younger, but when
Yeah.
it's close, it's like, all right, do I have time to do the things that I still need to do? You know,
Tony,
and
all of you,
it,
I don't think you will. You have so many things going on constantly. You are incredibly creative. You won't have time, I think, to finish it all. I mean,
well,
you live to 100.
Yeah. Count on 50 more years at least.
well, what I mentioned in the talk, which it had occurred to me just at the time, it was like, and I don't know if there's any astrological thing that anyone has ever said this before, but I just felt it. There were 30-year patterns in my life. So I was born in September 52. I left the society on my 28th birthday, and I started at the UN on my 30th birthday. So it was 30 years, basically. And then I was there exactly for 30 years. And then this new phase has begun where I'm stepping out a little bit. And I'm writing more, I'm doing things more public in some plays and stuff. So it seems to me, and I don't know, the moon and the sun, that was easy. What the third 30 years is, I don't know, but I'm thinking of it in terms of 30 years right now.
Ah,
Yeah, good. Your 90s will be fabulous.
Yeah.
Tony, this is interesting. You're a Chinese water dragon.
Yes.
So, but 60 years ago, 230s, was Margaret Cross's birthday. She was a water dragon. And
Ah,
I was just reading something of like her last days. She was so vehement about not having any priest, you know, to deal
yeah.
directly with God. She was all about that.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just think it's very interesting because we all have to listen inwardly. We all have to really listen inwardly, you know.
What do you
Yeah.
guys think Baba meant? Baba said, I don't know, he just blurted it out, but he was talking about this Bengali lady and that kitty, this one, that one. He said, Margaret, I'm putting Margaret in charge of spirituality for the West, or something. That's paraphrase, something like that. But
Well, I
he
say,
was like in charge of spirituality in the West.
Well, everybody knows what that
He
means,
was
Ralph.
the manager, big
what,
manager of that.
What does it mean,
Think
Tony?
what
of
does
that.
everyone
This
know?
joke is
I don't know.
being funny.
I,
Because
how could we know? I
Well,
don't know.
we're in good hands if she's in charge. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, Baba used to let her go to meetings that no
I
men
did.
were.
Yeah.
Yeah, no men were there. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mean for women. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Donkin, William Donkin. I mean, he wasn't with the women, but he was there and around, you know. He was
Mhm.
a man,
Mm-hmm.
Rosa.
He was a lot on the Blue Butt Strip, but it was otherwise all women.
Oh, that no, but on the no, he didn't ride in the box. Well, I don't know.
Are you
He
are you
was
saying
really-
that Duncan made the comment that Baba said that Margaret would be in charge of spirituality for the West? Where
No, Baba said that, it's in the books. It's where I got it. I think I read it in through just
Yeah.
reading through the biography. But Rosie said about just women were with Baba. They're living with.
Mm.
However, I think William Donkin was too during in those 30s and 40s time. Yeah.
So was Mewan Jesawala as a
Well,
child.
he's not a Westerner, though. He's not a Westerner.
He's not a wet Westerner. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Mhm.
Who
Well,
knows?
he lived
Well-
well, I mean, all the other Mandali did as well. Yeah.
Well, between the basic rules of the
I see
telephone
what you're
game
saying.
and our aging memories,
Yeah.
I'm already skeptical about stuff before I got to an age where
Right,
I
you're
don't
right.
remember stuff. So I don't know.
Mhm.
The thing is, do we have time to be just here in the now? Of course. Have all the time in the world.
What other time is there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And I just that thing that Baba says, those of you that know about me and love me in this present generation are very, very fortunate.
Aren't
Yeah.
we now?
You can, boy, I feel so blessed because even if so many of the time I can't feel Baba, but I feel I've tagged on and that maybe I can reflect him just because, you know, he's my life. Yeah.
Well, speaking of time, we're closing in on 3 hours here, folks.
I'll let you get back to work, Tony. Thank you.
This has been look what you have engendered, Tony. You got to
this has
come.
been fun. Well, I mean, I've got to
stories.
say, I really have to thank Mayor Nas.
Very nice.
You know, like I say, if you're listening, Mayor Nas, you really should put the whole song into the. I talked to her privately. She doesn't think so, but this would not be happening if she had not heard Baba. You know, and I heard it. I mean, I've shared little bits of these stories, but I've never told like the UN as a thing in my life.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to, but Baba was clearly saying yes, and the idea of having the prayers to start it was the clincher for me, and it's not even there. But the one is, at least Pravartagar is there.
Well, you've done it now. Our recording will include all of them, including your forgetting.
That's right. Right. That's right.
Pray for me. I shot the finger at Orang on RT the other night.
Oh,
I felt bad about it.
that wasn't recorded, Ralph. So you got away with it.
I should have said.
Well,
I've been trying to repent and it just won't come. It just won't come. I can't get it to come.
Well, now this is recorded.
Oh, it is,
Of
Bob.
course.
Oh my!
Thanks so much, Tony. This is wonderful.
You know, I love being together with.
It's wonderful
with us. You know, I love being together with us.
Oh, and folks are going to enjoy this talk. They're going to really like this one.
Oh, Tony, just five words from the mystical language that Mayor Baba spoke to the arena during the Blue Bus time. Oneness is rest in being. Oneness is rest in being.
Amen.
Well, really, it makes you relax.
Yeah.
We're all one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by the way, that's rest is capital R and being is capital B. And there is only one being.
And if you actually write that out, that spells orb.
Oh, oneness.
Oneness is rest in being.
Okay. Wow.
And here we are on this orb.
Yeah.
Lenita wrote something in the chat, Tony, that she said, "Great story, Tony. I really appreciate it. Just I didn't know if you were seeing it. Thank you so much. She's gone.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I didn't. I didn't. I saw her here, but
the
yeah.
dancer from Brazil, speaking of Latin, speaking of the Argentina, wow, we have that wonderful energy.
Well, I sang an early version of the Pavardagaar prayer with the whole thing, the three of them. I sang an early version for Ira, basically at the moment that he passed at the hospital.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I
Who
had
was that for? Ira? Who?
Ira Gross. Ira
Oh,
Gross.
Ira
Anita's
Gross.
husband. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I could feel that he was going. And it was as if he needed help to go to Baba.
Wow.
Because Baba got us, we were at a Bernie Sanders rally at Town Hall. And we got straight in the taxi, took us to the hospital. And I could feel Baba reaching out. I could feel Ira letting go. I didn't open my eyes while I was singing it, but Lenita could see the monitors, and she told us to get out because he was passing, and she wanted to be alone with us.
Yeah.
That's the guy that.
But it was clear that Baba had sent us there for that prayer.
Wow.
What?
Passed away.
Tony, could you give me your email or phone number so I can send you that?
Argentina.
I don't want to record it. I'll just put it in the chat here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's what I already do it.
What were you saying, Ralph?
Is that the Ira,
Gross.
the brother of
No,
Here it is. Italian.
huh?
no.
It was
That's
His parents
Jeff
are
Shev's.
your chiropractor. His father is your chiropractor. Is that right?
No, that's still another Ira. No, yes.
What's
That's
his
Ira
third
Goodman.
last name?
That's someone else. Now, he's in good health.
It was Ira
far as I know.
Gross, Ralph.
That's Ira and Steve Goodman you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Or unless
Oh,
you were
yeah.
thinking Ira and Jeff Shev.
Was
It was
Ira a New
Lenita's.
Yorker?
Lenita's
Gross.
husband. Yeah,
No, she had a husband.
Ira
When
Gross.
did that happen? When did he pass away?
1990. Wait, no, 2016 it would be probably, because
Yeah.
Bernie was running for president the first time. Yeah.
When my dogs were born.
Ira's was a wonderful, such a funny guy.
October. Bernie
I met him in
Sanders.
his
I
first trip to
remember
India.
him.
In the day before Amartithi, he'd come up to you and he'd go, "Who am I?" And he had a biggish nose, I guess. I never really thought of that, but he'd go like this and he'd press his nose. "Who am I?" And he thought he looked like Baba. But he was just so funny about everything, A wonderful Aquarian.
Oh, that's nice. Lenita will appreciate hearing this, I think. Folks, I think we need to wrap it up.
Yes.
Can I be so abrupt?
And Betty, thank you so much for getting this happening here.
This has been such a treat.
Yeah.
A treat. Yeah. Okay.
I don't just sit around watching. I watched it once after the recording was made, but to just sit back now and take my picture off the screen and just watch it, that was wonderful.
All right. Many people will enjoy. Thank you, dear
Baba.
Baba, for a wonderful, wonderful morning. Special thank you for Tony. What a personality. What Baba.
What a personality. Why, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Last night I shot an elephant in my pajamas. How I got in my pajamas, I'll never know. Jay Baba.